Good morning. I'm Ron Silver, and I want to welcome you to this webinar that we are doing here at Catholic Charities this morning. We're going to be talking about the Center for Immigration Defense. It's our one-year anniversary, and we're very proud of what we've been able to accomplish here at Catholic Charities with the center. I have a panel with me today that are going to do the primary talking about what's happening here. To my left is John Herrera. John came to Catholic Charities a little over 10 years ago. He is from Colombia. And one of the things that you're going to notice about this panel is everybody here has something in their life that has taken them beyond Oregon and has sort of given them a worldview beyond Oregon. John is originally from Colombia in South America. He has been here, and he is the director of the Immigration Legal Services Program in Catholic Charities, and the Center for Immigration Defense has come under that, through that process here that John will talk about. Next to John is Deborah Neighbors. Deborah is an attorney. She is handling the removal caseload here at the Center for Immigration Defense. Deborah went to both the University of Oregon as an undergrad and in law school. She was Phi Beta Kappa as an undergrad. She was in the Peace Corps in Costa Rica to give her some international experience, and she came to the Center for Immigration Defense from already working here at Catholic Charities in the Rural Legal Assistance Program. And our other panelist is retired immigration judge Michael Bennett. Judge Bennett, again, having this, if you will, this experience beyond the borders of the continental United States. Judge Bennett was a practicing lawyer, found himself in American Samoa, where he was both a assistant district attorney and a public defender. Came back to the continental United States, became an immigration lawyer within the Office of Immigration and Litigation within the Department of Justice. And then went over to the Rome side, became an immigration judge for many years. First was down in El Centro, as I recall, and then came up here to Portland, Oregon, where he's been for many years, originally from Oregon, an Oregon native. I myself started practicing law in Los Angeles. I was an assistant U.S. attorney, came here in 1994. I was the chief of the civil division here at the U.S. Attorney's Office for many years, and I retired in 2015. And so it's really quite a great panel we've got to talk about what's happening now in the world of immigration and what's happening with the Center for Immigration Defense. I want to also let you know that as long as you stick with our the Facebook page for Catholic Charities in the Center, you can watch this thing over if you think we're fabulous and you want to watch it again, or if you're coming in later. Also, there's going to be links to allow you to make donations, and there's going to be links that will allow you to volunteer, particularly if you're an attorney or a paralegal or a social worker. Those are skills that we could definitely use here at the center, and there are links that will allow you to let us know about you, and we look forward to you potentially becoming volunteers. And then finally, I think there's the ability for you to send in questions, because we're going to have a little bit at the end. We're going to try to save some time at the end for answering questions. So if you can send in questions, we'll be able to make note of that, and I will get them, and hopefully we'll be able to answer them. And so with that, I want to get started, and I'm going to introduce and turn it over to John, give you some sense of the history of how the history and the need for the creation for the Center for Immigration Defense. So John, it's yours now.
Well, thank you, Ron. Thank you for this wonderful introduction to our panel, and thank you for being so helpful for the formation of the Center for Removal Defense at Catholic Charities. You've been an instrumental piece of these, and we also are so thankful for Judge Bennett, which is a retired judge, but also a wonderful advocate for our migrant community outside. The Center for Removal Defense is so much a need over the years here at Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities started providing immigration legal services back in 1996, and we have been in front of the judges in Oregon with few cases here and there, but not a dedicated attorney able to go and represent these families facing separation. As you in the audience know or may not, having an immigration attorney in immigration court is something that is not provided by the government, the U.S. government. You need to find your own attorney and pay your own attorney, otherwise you're going to face the judges and the immigration attorney, the OCC attorney, which is the ICE attorney, trying to deport you yourself. So immigration legal services and with the initiative from our development and our development people help us to get the idea of what we can do now that we're facing these incremental removal issues for our immigrants in Oregon and refugees as well. And we came up with the idea of making a center for removal defense, which entitled not only representation in court, but also a set of other tools like helping with education, and also taking more beyond that exclusively representation, but seeking help with the mental health issues that comes with facing issues in court. So today we have marked a year of having our wonderful attorney, Deborah Neighbors, who is the head of that program, and we have a legal assistant who is also doing a tremendous job. We are able now to go and, as needed basis to represent people in court those who are, facing the separation of families, and that's basically what we're trying to do with this center, is to keep the families together, keep the unity of the family, and defend the immigrants in court.
I think it's important that we keep in mind, and Deborah, I'm going to get into this with one of your cases in particular. Somebody who is arrested and faces maybe a year in prison, the state or the federal government has a legal obligation to provide them an attorney. Somebody who is involved in an immigration removal process, and the net result of that could mean a return to a country where they could die. They are on their own. Unless they have the resources, nobody is going to give them a lawyer, even though the ramifications of losing can be catastrophic, both for that individual or maybe for family. And so that is one of the reasons why, and another thing is, and John, you can speak to this, maybe or Deborah can, what is the significance in terms of outcome, whether somebody in the immigration removal process has a lawyer or doesn't have a lawyer? You want to speak to what statistics have shown is the result of having assistance of counsel?
That's fine. I don't have specific statistics. I can tell you, in my experience working with clients and providing that representation, one thing is just the comfort level and knowing there's someone to get them through the process. I do want to say I've heard that the statistics are higher for someone who has representation to potentially receive a grant, depending on what case they have on asylum or say cancellation or removal. But I'm not certain of the numbers.
Judge, are you familiar, without a specific number, my understanding is somebody's potential for having a favorable outcome of their immigration court experience rises significantly if they have counsel. I don't have the statistics at the top of my head here, but the statistics are quite clear that that's the case. And at least I know when I was on the bench and then when my colleague, Judge Andrew Sloan was on the bench, the two of us, when we got cases, and there's a little bit of the problem is that what you don't know, but we were both pretty adept at recognizing significant cases that needed to be worked up, if you will. And I believe you're going to be talking to Deborah about that kind of a case. And we were both tied into the immigration lawyer community through AILA and through Catholic Charities and the other pro bono groups. Catholic Charities didn't have the Center for Immigration Defense up and running, but even through volunteer groups, which Portland was known for, to get that kind of representation. So we endeavored as much as we could. One of the things we had to avoid as judges is we had to kind of hand off the idea we couldn't, that is, pick in particular the attorney, because then there would be some sort of also conflict of interest. But that is, we knew who to contact and then how that contact could help arrange. But we're moving into a better situation, at least right here in Portland, but still far from adequate at statewide, nationwide. But
So let me turn over to Deborah and talk about a couple of specific cases. You and I have talked beforehand about this, to sort of discuss what is the impact of having competent counsel representing you. And I'm thinking particularly I want to start with the one where we had a successful outcome and talk a little bit about that, and we'll explore that case.
Sure. So I was told about a case coming out of the state of Washington from an attorney with Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. And what had happened with that situation is that person needed representation because she had moved from Washington State to Oregon, and she needed representation in court. And this attorney had been calling around trying to find people who could potentially help her. She's a minor, so she's 17 years old, and she needed help. And she also had a small child, so two individuals needing help in court, really not knowing what to do whatsoever. Fortunately, what happened was that I was able to step in. Her mother had what's called had applied for what's called a T visa. She was a victim.
Can you explain that?
Sure, I'll explain that briefly. Her mother was a victim of trafficking in Central America. She was coming to the U.S. And so anyhow, what had happened is the daughter was on the mother's T visa application as a derivative, but she basically needed help to resolve what was going on with her, the transferring of her case here in Portland.
So let me interrupt you for a second, Deborah. And how easy would that be for somebody not represented by an attorney to sort out what their rights are in relation to a mother's got a T visa because she's been victim of trafficking. I'm a teenager, and without a lawyer, how does she figure out her rights?
Exactly, and she didn't know. And thankfully, because of this program and because we could provide service, we could at least get her oriented and let her know what the or other options, because she still had an option of filing what's called, an asylum application with her as being an unaccompanied minor. So that was something else that we were able to do for her. And eventually we were able to withdraw that application because she was granted T status. Thankfully, this story had a very nice ending. So anyhow, she was able to get that T granted. We could close the affirmative, we could go ahead and withdraw and terminate the application there in court, and then she could move on with the process of the T there in Seattle. So
I want to take you back to that asylum claim, because if there's anything we've been hearing a lot about in the news lately, in the world of immigration, there has been a lot of talk on the political spectrum about how the asylum program is being abused. And I want to speak to this young lady. It sounds like you did start an asylum process for her, is that right?
that is correct.
What did you base that on? Without getting into specifics, was there a sense that there was any danger to this young woman if she'd gone back to her country of origin?
I think there is extreme danger, both from an incident that she unfortunately had, a pretty sad incident that she had with a private actor, and also some issues that she was dealing with in her family. So everything that I had learned from listening to her story told me, we need to do anything and everything to prevent her from going back to that country, because she would be in harm's way.
So again, this is our success story. I mean, let's two follow-up questions about that. One is, without knowing for sure, how likely do you think it would have been for this young lady to have successfully navigated the system if she'd been on her own?
Completely on her own, I think it would have been extremely difficult. This is a young woman who was, we chatted during court and everything. She was starting to learn a tiny bit of English, spoke 2 indigenous languages, and also was conversing in Spanish to get by and everything. But it would have been, I think, something that she couldn't do entirely alone. And one of the things that, the extreme satisfaction I know I get from this job is just being able to help people. And, she was very thankful from the beginning to the end. Thank you for helping me through this. Thank you for answering my questions. And, I would say that one of the last things that we did for her was just let her know, you no longer need to do ICE check-ins. I mean, she thought that maybe she would still have to be doing that. Just a number of things, just basically informing someone, letting them know what their rights are, letting them know that there are other options out there for them, and just being with someone, helping them through the process, I think, is huge.
So the final follow-up question on this young woman's experience is, had she been on her own and failed to gain either asylum or get onto the mother's T visa application, I'm assuming that the end result would have been she could have been deported. That would have been the result of failing in the system? Is that fair?
I think that's fair to say.
So based on what you know about this young woman and her situation, had we deported her back to her country of origin, was she in danger?
Yes. To me, the way that I see that case, without question, I would have had a hard time as her attorney, now her former attorney, knowing that she had to figure out some way to, I don't know what she would have done. And that was, that was something that she said too. I don't know. A minor with a young child in a dangerous area, that's the only place that she knew growing up.
Congratulations. I want to talk about a second case where we may or may not end up with success, involving somebody out of the rural Oregon. Can you talk about that a little, what you've done?
Sure. So another thing that thankfully, because of this great program that we've been able to work with, we can serve people that are in other areas of Oregon. Of course, the issue is we still need help in their communication because there's a lot that goes into these cases to prepare a strong case for them. In this case, a woman came to us through another organization, again, another organization referred them to us, and we were able to help out. But she came to us pretty late in the game, meaning that she had a hearing that was coming up pretty quickly. It was a situation in which it would have been hard for me to tackle that right then and there. Long story short, she was, we were able to get a continuance for her to continue that hearing, so that now she has time to prepare for that hearing that she has. It's an asylum case, so she'll actually have some time to prepare. So I won't get into specifics about what was going on with her case, but she has, of course, some serious issues to deal with back at home in Mexico. And what makes it another issue for her is also dealing with getting treated, getting radiation 2 times a week. So also dealing with health issues at the same time, dealing with the stress of so many stressors here. And again, I don't know what that outcome is going to be. All I can do is, and all we can do as a team is provide the best possible, outcome for her, support her along the way. But I think the great thing is, and of course we can't take everyone, but at least we can be here along the way to help someone get through a process that's very hard. And I would say even more complicated, of course, when you have a sickness or an illness.
I just got through reading Brian Stevenson's book, Just Mercy, which was about his experience doing death row work in Alabama. And one of the things that I was struck in that book was he didn't just take cases he thought he was going to win. He took cases that he thought somebody needed help. Mm-hmm. And could you reflect on that in terms of, and John, you can weigh in as well, in terms of what you see as the mission here at the Center for Immigration Defense? Are you looking for the cases you're going to win, or are you looking for the cases where you think you can help?
Let me take on that, because that's a debate that we always have. And once we see someone calling to our center seeking representation in court, and as we discuss cases and consultations and the fact of each case, Deborah is like, we want to help this individual, but we don't know about the outcome. And what we come up with as this statement is, no matter what the outcome is, the help needs to be provided. And someone facing the system needs an attorney, and we are attorneys here. So what we're doing is putting the case together, doing our best with those cases, with the facts. We can't change case-based facts, but we can present it in the right way to the judges so they can decide. And that's what we do. I think every case is every case, even with the outcome of losing that, is at least providing the right helping hope at the right time. That's what we do.
I just want to welcome anybody who's new to our webcast, who's just come in. I'm Ron Silver. I'm moderating this panel, or this webinar, a word that I don't remember existing when I was a lawyer. I'm moderating this webinar. I'm the retired former chief of the Civil Division here at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Portland. I have with me John Herrera, who is the Director for Immigration and Legal Services at Catholic Charities of Oregon. Deborah Neighbors, who is the primary attorney for the Center for Immigration Defense,
And the other member of our panel is a retired immigration law judge, Michael Bennett. I'm actually going to turn it over to Judge Bennett now. Judge Bennett retired about a year or so ago after a lengthy career, both as an attorney in private practice, an assistant district attorney, an assistant public defender, an attorney for the Office of Immigration and Litigation, and also many, many years as an immigration judge within the Executive Office for Immigration Review. And the judge and I talked a bit before we went live. And sort of the thing I want to throw out to you is you've had a chance to step away from it now for a year plus. And something we talked about that really resonated with me was how in this country right now we're in this debate. Our immigration system, which was appropriately so, in my judgment, a source of national pride, how we've absorbed waves upon waves of folks into this country from all over the world. How we, we still venerate the Statue of Liberty, and that's that message of the pride of these ways. And we got into a bit of an us-them situation now. And so I'm just going to sort of throw it open to you to sort of speak about where you are a year from the bench.
Well, let me go back just the Office of Immigration Litigation is an exalted state that I didn't get to. I was an IDET's trial attorney in El Centro. So
thank you.
I want to make sure that the other things were they're all within the realm of what I had done. I'd go back a moment to just say, 28 years as an immigration judge. It was really, with my own background, I couldn't have predicted a job like that for myself, but it was just a wonderful job. But with the pace of the work and the last 5 years of work, if you just consider that the kind of cases that Deborah was describing, of hearing maybe 5 or 6 of those a week, and yet seeing 30 or 40, and the emphasis was, on pretrial hearings or follow-up hearings, and the majority, whether they were 17 or 22, were or sometimes 35 or 42 as grandmothers and mothers, and just so many. And I hadn't even thought of this, but in Cottage Grove, address, and I did the Google search of the address, and I was correct. And my grandparents' house, still on the old Highway 99 going into Cottage Grove, now made into apartments, were indigenous Guatemalans living in the house that I had spent many a day, including overnights. So that's the Oregon of today. So it is going on a year and a half, and I moved out of Portland to Seaside, where my own immigrant grandparents lived. And I really did need to kind of quiet my mind of being just overwhelmed from the work. It was wonderful work, but just, I needed that opportunity. And I'll be honest, I didn't subscribe to any TV. And I limit the news and the input to kind of the stimulus. I keep up on it. And even that sometimes is maddening. And in fact, the maddening part of it is that I still believe that the majority of Americans are really united on immigration. But the loudest voice now, though, is that us versus them. And many voices have been empowered to have that being heard around the country, and echoes of drumbeats of that. I had always thought that that, you know, at least 70 to 80% of the country always expressed just an internal deep pride and reverence at our immigrant history. And maybe even internal, and some people had that kind of division. But that 20-30% of the other is kind of a fear-based, and frankly, it's kept all the way going back to, say, the year 2000, when it was recognized that the laws haven't kept up with our needs, say, for changes in laws that would accommodate people, especially that came when the second President Bush said that, you know, we need to update and accommodate people that came after legalization in the 80s and family unity, but laws that didn't keep up. We have agricultural workers and other workers in the worker economy that need to keep up. And so, but there's enough of that fear that has kept that from going. And when I've said that, without looking at political party or right-wing, left-wing, I'm talking about, I think that those percentages hold true people that are conservative or liberal. And in fact, I know that from my experience, because even though I don't judge individuals, I've seen enough from rural to farm to poor people, all mixed families, people that have relied on immigrant caretakers of different nationalities, who have expressed, even if they express some sort of prejudices, but have expressed deep affection or love. And I'm not talking about marriage cases, I'm just saying reliance. And so I know that to be the case. I thought things were somewhat bad on June 1 of 2017 when I retired. And I have to say that, you know, I'm a person of faith. I don't believe in imposing any particular faith. I've been a lifelong Catholic, and I don't hesitate to say that, but it's not a matter of that imposition of that on anyone. But I'm just heartsick of that idea that it's a win-loss. And I would kind of take that of the terrible tragedy of the Molly Tibbetts case from Iowa.
And that Molly Tibbetts was the young woman who was killed when she done out for a jog. Is that right?
Yes, and apparently it was an agricultural worker who was working at a farm there. The farmers were apparently active politically in the Republican Party. And, you know, and I keep them in my prayers. They were quite upset. You know, they live in a community, united. They said that the defendant in the case had papers, and later they said, well, they didn't vet them through but that shows the immigration process broken down. And there was the fear-mongering started up about it, said, well, it was unnecessary, of course. It's terrible. No murder is necessary. If there's a matter of self-defense, it's not a murder. And the family stood up and said that they weren't going to allow hate to mar their daughter's memory, and their daughter wasn't. And she had her own opinions. And I pray, God, that we don't use that also the other way. It's not that. It's that, unfortunately, I think the megaphone of hate, and you know, anyone that's lost a child and then lost a child to violence, it unimaginable, the pain. And if they stood up as victims of people who were here unlawfully, and this man used false documents and is here unlawfully, uniting a system that would work and having more information, whether it could stop that. I mean, if we have 10 million people who don't have status, you know, we have a problem. Whether knowing who they are could stop anything, I don't know. I mean, it's a large population. in a nearby area, we had a citizen who apparently murdered a foreign student golfer. All of those are tragedies. It's a tragedy for the community. The defendant was part of that community. It would be good for us to be united in grief, the community, be united in prayer for the farmers, for the victim's family, and be united in the solutions that we should have. And be a little bit humbled that we've lost track of what we're about as a country, rather than pointing fingers and then saying, well, it's your fault of this party because you haven't helped us. No, it's your fault because you permit this, you encourage this kind of unlawful presence. No, I think that both sides of goodwill could work on this fairly simply, in my opinion, and that's with the experience of really, and I'll say it, the love that people have within the community for each other of various backgrounds, and how they come forth for that person that they find out doesn't have status to say, oh, please, they're part of our community. Maybe they even made a mistake at some time. But don't tear our community apart.
Back in, I want to say 1986, I was an assistant U.S. attorney out of Los Angeles, but I happened to be back in Washington, D.C., and I was teaching that week. And it was when I'm going to say the Simpson bill, and I can't remember the full name of it. It was during the Reagan administration, the attempt at some immigration reform was going on in Congress. And so I went by my own personal congressman's office, got a pass in gallery, and I actually watched senators talking and being rational with each other as they were, because I knew this was going to be historic because I was doing immigration work in Los Angeles. And yeah, these senators were actually, on the floor of the Senate, rationally discussing immigration, and they went on and passed the bill. So from my own experience, it can. I do want to say that we have some wonderful fact checkers working behind the scenes here while we're talking, and we have learned, and I can share with the webinar audience, that immigrants who are in detention that have access to counsel are 4 times more likely to be released from detention. And the other thing that I've been informed of is that immigrants with counsel are 11 times more likely to have release options. And immigrants with counsel are 5 times more likely to actually win their case in the system. So yeah, the statistics are overwhelming, that probably the single biggest factor in somebody in the immigration process gaining the relief they're seeking is whether they do have counsel.
The 1986 bill, so I started with the INS in 88.
Okay.
Alan Simpson, Republican senator from Wyoming.
Right.
Peter Rodino, Democratic congressman from New Jersey, was a Simpson Rodino that's called legalization.
I couldn't remember the second name.
1986.
Thank you.
IRCA, Immigration Reform and Control Act.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about then the family separations.
Sure.
And not commented on too much since the policy was ended, but there's still a few lost children. And one of the things that it seems like that hasn't been commented on is that laws can be tough. Decisions can be tough. Sometimes advocates for the government can be tough. And even if there's a broader policy promoting unity, individual advocates for the government can lose their way and promote a win-lose. Sometimes as a judge, I would have to say, well, we don't have to cause harm. We can avoid doing that. And this was a decision that was supposed to be a deterrent and with decisions to change the law, which was really meant to take away gender-based asylum claims. I think that's a matter of maybe by the Attorney General,
We'll get into that.
but this is all part of that, if you will, the enactment of. And I don't think there's been a lot of comment. Maybe these have been reunited, but it took away children who either could not talk or were not of sufficient age, and they didn't have enough identifying information to be able to reunite them with their parents. We have to think of that. What are we talking about? Now, I bring that up because to talk about something that happened in my courtroom in the year 2015. And because we had rotated courtrooms, I can fix the date as 2015. And this was during the time where we had these dockets of course, the women and children, is it really? And anyone there won't forget this. This young woman, maybe 23 or 4. And when we say she had a seizure, it's not like a grand mal seizure. And I don't recall exactly what it turned out to be her health condition. But the daunting travel from wherever, either deep in Mexico or Central America. And she was there with her 20-month-old. Now this happened in open court, so this is not sensitive information, but I don't remember the name. I don't remember anything about the name. Not just pass out, but it was a seizure where she was unconscious for a significant period of time with her 19 or 20-month-old daughter. This 19 or 20-month-old, and we've heard of these cases of 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds being able to pick up the phone, or, especially children of this country who are used to electronics. But we think of babies, that have separation anxiety and cry when they're taken away from their mothers. This baby didn't wail like mommy's down. She was crying, but she did almost the same as what any 8, 9, 10, or 11 or teenager, or even an adult. I don't know what the mother and child went through, but this 19 or 20-month-old who could not was on top of her mother attempting to revive her. Wow. In court. Eventually, the mother did revive, and she reached her arm up. This was before. This was about, I don't know, it seemed like an eternity as we waited. Our staff came in, some of the attorneys, everybody did what they could. The other, we have a wonderful population. The immigrant population had their concern. They helped clear the area around. Then they were dismissed out by our staff. No one took the baby away because she was on duty, that baby. The mother, she didn't open her eyes, but she raised her arm and they got her laid out prone instead of slumped as she was on the pew. And then her arm went up over the baby. And the baby laid there. And that is how they got her on the gurney. And then she started saying she had no money to pay. She started getting then somewhat frantic about how she was going to I don't know how she was surviving, trying to
Mhm.
get away from whatever was going on. I felt I had to remain, that I should not abandon the bench, because in that situation, I don't know, I didn't think of it being patronizing or like I was, but still I had a role of, to fulfill until everything was clear. I don't know. It could have been a matter of life and death for the mother if the baby hadn't been there. I don't know enough about the kind of seizure or what rousing, what, but I know things can make a difference. I don't know enough medically. I don't even know about the baby, but if they had separated. There is something that the Creator has given in each human being that is sacred, and that should not be attacked. And to have caused harm to that, in my opinion, is something that it is a wrong. Should have never happened, and I pray that we can't correct all wrongs, that we would have voices that can be heard, to not go any farther than that and try to atone for whatever has happened. But I won't forget that for the rest of my life.
Thank you for that, telling that story, Judge. I do a lot of civil rights work, and I think it was 2 days ago was the 101st birthday of Fannie Lou Hamer, you may remember. And she was quite famous at the 1964 Democratic Convention when she gave a speech to the Credentials Committee, and she started off by saying, I question, is this America? It's a question that still resonates, and her story speaks to that. I want to throw some questions out to the panel in the time we have remaining. And one of the things I do want to just speak to right away, John, have you answered this, is there was quite a bit of publicity local here in Portland that the city appropriated $500,000, a significant amount of money, and to read in the paper, they sent it off to Catholic Charities to do immigration work. And I would like you to, since one of the things we are asking people to do is donate, because we do need the money, I don't want to create cognitive dissonance here, that we've all of a sudden got all this money from the city, and yet we're asking for money. Can you speak to what Catholic Charities is doing with that $500,000?
Well, thank you, Ron, for bringing this issue. It resonated in many Oregonians that we received that big sum of money. I might say that from the $500,000, Catholic Charities itself is going to get $0. I can confidently say that. We have been chosen by the city of Portland as the fiscal agent to manage the money, and it's great for Catholic Charities to have the confidence in the city, but it's going to cause issues because we are not getting all the publicity is that we get the money to hire attorneys. We're not. We are part of a group of people, I might say, correct myself, a group of nonprofits doing something called universal representation, which is providing attorneys for individuals facing removal issues in court, in immigration court, within the next 6 months. And we doing this work, we from the $500,000, we're disbursing that money to others nonprofits, and we are taking zero. And we're not even charging a fee for managing this and going back to the city with the reports and all that involved. It's one more step that we as a Catholic charities in doing the job for keeping the families together and providing some help for so many people. But just to be clear, from that $500,000, we're going to get zero. We might get some money from other grants available, and that we're still working on it. There's some partnership in other, private foundations still, giving money to this project. But specifically, in going to your question, $0.
So don't be intimidated from donating on the link that we put in the Facebook page. I do want to speak to something else, and that is historically, women who were the victim of terrible violence in their country of origin, particularly in Central America, where the violence was such that they were prepared to flee for their lives and undertake the incredibly perilous journey to get to this country, with the understanding that if they had to go back, it could cause their death. That would be the basis of an asylum claim. Very recently, in a decision called AB, Attorney General Sessions took it upon himself to review that concept and had sort of turned that process around 180 degrees. And either Deborah or Judge Bennett, if you could speak to both the impact of this decision and how this may affect the work we're going to be able to do here, and how extraordinary it was for Attorney General Sessions to actually interpose himself into this process.
I could take the very first part just briefly and say that, yes, it's definitely affecting, particularly a lot of times, it's women that are fleeing situations involving domestic violence. In my caseload, for example, when that decision came down, my ears very much perked up. And at this point now, I have to think of ways that I can deal with the impact of a matter of AB when I'm in court with a client who has a similar situation to women facing domestic violence in Central America, with private actor situations.
And let me ask you, as private actors, let me ask you this just to expand on what AB decided. If a woman flees El Salvador as a country, because there's a very strong chance she could be killed by a family member or a gang member or whatever, and the local police department will do nothing to protect her, and she comes to this country. Under the AB decision, what has Attorney General Sessions said in terms of whether that's a basis for her to be granted asylum in this country?
So, and I'll probably let Judge Bennett talk a little bit more about that as well too. But it's going to be a challenge. It's that sort of case. Say the person didn't have maybe police reports or other documents or evidence that could help along that case. It's going to be a great challenge once they're in immigration court in the U.S. To deal with that.
Comments?
Well, I'd have to look at AB again. The problem will be, as I understand it, it seems to say that the idea that local authorities won't protect, which is that's the whole thing about domestic violence, meaning we don't necessarily prevent domestic violence in the United States, but we're seen to have some opportunity to try to prevent it. and I say some advisedly, and some remedies to escape it. Some, again, advisedly. The AB seems to say the fact that local authorities don't provide those isn't the basis. And that would seem to just mean there is no claim. Now I'd have to look at that again. Again, this is part of being away, is that you're not reading it every day, you read it. And then the Ninth Circuit, since it seems the Attorney General is publishing so many cases, publishes every case. And there's a good and a bad about that. The bad about it is that you have to keep reading everything because there's a trap. They didn't used to do that, but then they're publishing all of the things that aren't all that significant, but then you never know when something really significant is going to come up. However, that means that we'll have to go back to see what they've published and what have they published separate and apart from board decisions that established precedent on domestic violence. Meaning, what has been the federal precedent? If the federal precedent simply recognizes the board precedent, then you're kind of in that's problematic with AB. I would go back a little bit further because, of course, we go back to RA and I go back to Methuselah myself and immigration law. So what happened was in the development of gender-based persecution, I, as a naive immigration judge in our 1994 conference, when Attorney General Reno came there, I did stand up and state that I thought the gender-based claims, which were at that time being developed by Muslim women of some means, and this is not to denigrate those means, but they had some means to say that they were being, that their voices were being stopped. And so the claims were being said that they were trying to assert their independence in a patriarchal society, and they weren't being allowed to, and they were being specifically compared to say, and I don't recall the case, a poor Brazilian woman who was being domestically abused, and as to how that claim would work. But there was physical violence against the woman. And I had indicated to the Attorney General, so it didn't seem to me that it said, rich you win, poor you lose. So my Catholic grandmothers, I think, ended up until AB that in the long run, their training of this boy ended up, the law prevailed until AB. And that's how it developed.
And one question I do have is, based on your experience, Judge.
So I'm sorry, we talk over the top, but so that was recognized that there was this dichotomy, and it doesn't make sense. The AB is thought that, oh, well, we have the masses of people, but what gives? We talk about Deborah's case. Oh yeah, a 17-year-old girl with a baby. Oh yeah, that's the easiest thing. That's what you want to do, is abandon your home, go through a country where you don't hardly speak the language and get here. Oh yeah, that's great. What an easy life. You know, yeah, and just say asylum and you win, as I heard a candidate say that's all it takes. What do you mean? That's not. We're lucky if we have such courageous people to help to help infuse our country with such greatness, as opposed to leave us with the static nature of an aging population.
Thank you, Judge. I want to actually turn the question over to Deborah, and that is, or maybe John. But what is the size of your caseload? So people who are listening get a sense of how much we're doing and, how much more is out there.
Yeah, so it's constantly changing, of course. I would say right now we have 10 about principal applications, I would say, on any given application or relief that we're asking for in court. And then when you include other people on those applications, I would say that number rises to about 19 people that we're currently able to serve. We had some cases that before things have changed, things have been constantly changing this year alone with Attorney General Sessions, but one of the things that has changed is what's called administrative closure has been kind of taken away to some degree. And before administrative closure, the rules in that changed, we were able to get some cases administratively closed while we were waiting the decision on another form of relief, in this case, something called a U visa. So that was a very, very positive outcome for that case.
Can I just interrupt you for a second, if you would explain, is it a good thing to get something administratively closed?
It is.
Can you explain why?
Yes, I can briefly explain why, and that is because it would take it off the docket and just allow that to be closed while something else is, happening. In this case, it was while we're waiting to find out if this person might be able to qualify for a visa in this case.
So,
receive different action.
So if I can rephrase it, if I understand it right, by doing administrative closure, what you're saying is somebody who's in a removal process, who ICE is trying to actually get out of the country, and they're saying, wait, there's something else that might help me. By administratively closing their case, basically that removes them from the threat of deportation while this other event can sort itself out that might actually protect them.
That's absolutely correct. And so that's one of many good things that's happened. And other things that have been going on this, I can say at least 6 months from this period of time, we have had probably, I want to say it's about 114 or so intakes. That doesn't mean that we do all of those consultations, but that at least means that we're able to reach out to people, at least let them know what other services might be available to them if we can't help out. So basically, we've just been there to help people navigate this extremely complex system to the best of our ability.
And has the center been involved in any of the family reunification issues around the children? To follow what the judge was talking about, children being taken away from at the border?
Yeah, definitely.
Can you speak to that?
We have locally in Oregon, through Catholic Charities, 3 families who came to us, and we have done consultation with these families, and Catholic Charities is not only serving them with the legal piece, but also other connecting them with the school system and the health system, trying to provide some help around this family education cases that came. And in fact, this morning we heard another case that came seeking help, someone who reunited with the a child, and but just still missing her mother. So that's really going to Judge Bennett. A point is the family unity, the importance of keeping families together and provide the sense of humanity to these people.
We have used Attorney General Sessions' name. We've spoken to some of the policies around family separation. One of the things that is in the media, it was discussed on the talking head shows, is this notion that, well, but President Obama was the biggest supporter of all. And so I guess what I'm going to throw out to any one of the three of you is, how does now compare with what policies were under President Obama when there were significant deportations?
I'll just defer that to Judge Bennett, who has the real sense of what he was dealing with, is people facing deportation, and what's the difference between deporting someone with criminal issues and facing the law, and because it's a tough law, but it's a law. And also, when we try to deport people, which only crime is to be in here undocumented or seeking protection, because it can be torture and there are countries of being facing that.
Well, I think a lot of the things we've talked about kind of illustrate the points. We haven't talked about DACA, but President Obama tried to talk about immigration reform. It passed the Senate. The fear kept it out of the House. He went ahead and, it was called unconstitutional. Don't believe it was. Immigration is akin to defense. It's a matter of sovereignty. So I think a lot of those calls based on the actions of the current administration, you don't hear a lot of that unconstitutionality talk anymore. Yes, I think some of the officials, frankly, there was line drawing about deporting criminals. Some of that maybe went a little too far. And you have to remember, in law enforcement agencies, there are a lot of people in there that do have a win-lose mentality. However, the overarching focus was to try to do things for community. And they wanted to have the DACA for parents, and that got stopped. So there is a tremendous difference. And there was a tremendous difference in also what was called hope. And that's what President Obama presented. And it's not about your politics in particular, but the community is full of fear now. Some of the fears are quite justified. Others go beyond it. But about benefits. Now, the benefits that are being talked about are not really benefits for the permanent residents. They're benefits for their citizen children. And so do we want to deprive citizen children of nutritional benefits? Is this what we want to do? And because they're permanent resident parents work in low-wage jobs that are important to us, this is what we're talking about. So somebody's there seeming as an architect of wanting to harm immigrants, in my opinion. So there is a difference. Not everything that happened under President Obama's administration was something that was necessarily good, but there still was an overarching message of hope, as opposed to this message is one of you're a problem to us, and the individual message, the family values of immigration, even saying that's what we based our country, but not anymore. It's not a message of hope.
So the last question I'm going to pose, because I think actually this could take up the entire 75 minutes, is why doesn't somebody just get in line? Why does, sure, I'm the child of immigrants, and I am the child of immigrants, but if they came here legally, why can't they do it legally? Why don't they just get in line? So I throw this out to any one of the three of you. We've probably got about 6-7 minutes left. Why should we be doing anything special for these folks that came in here legally? Why shouldn't they just get in line?
Wow, that's a great question, and also great point of view for many people, many Americans. And I really want to know what that line started. And you mentioned, Ron, really in a real situation that the American society needs to remember that even though we said this is a country of immigrants, we forget where we came from and who came first and what was the founding of this country and how people came legally because the system, the doors were open, wide open, and people need, the only line they were need to do was to get in a boat and came to Ellis, the island, and presented there in New York and take a note and names and really quick check in the health and and that was how many of even the current government has that same history in their life. I think they forget. The line is difficult because the system is, as Judge Bennett was mentioning, the reform in '86 create these really difficult paths to immigrate. And the economy and the global economy this has been changed. And we have the law that is, the law is a law and has to be followed and has to be, we need to comply with the law. But also the law needs to change according to the society as it changes. And I think that the United States immigration law stayed in the 80s and we are in the year 2000, almost 2020. And when if you recall, you have more history in that than myself, is that when the Braceros program was in, letting people come and stay, work, go back and forth, and support their families, and some of those families, some of these individuals stay. And when yes, I just have a question, it's like how the economy grow and how the farmers get the employees. Asking someone, oh, you're a wonderful worker, Juan, or Pedro, or Maria, do you have more family like you? Can you ask them to come and work for me? And create this issue, and we haven't fixed it. We haven't fixed it as a society, the politicians haven't done anything to fix it. Why? Who's benefiting from that? That's what the United States society needs to think about. Who's benefiting from having a rigid system that allows people to legalize those who have been here for years and years, and then see a system that is going to help the economy to grow in the way that we need to have in order to be the greatest economy in the earth. I don't think building a wall is going to help the economy to grow. This administration has worked really hard in building a wall that is an invisible wall, which is the private legal migration and trying to take away people, not only because they want to immigrate or seek protection from this great country, but I ask myself, this is because the color of skin that people are coming to stay in this country or to trying to save their lives? Because when a president of this wonderful nation say, why we don't have more immigrants from European countries, that means a lot. So in bottom line, there is no line to get in line to immigrate.
I mean, it is worth noting that for so many people whose family immigration needs are here, there was no wall, the door was wide open. It certainly was wide open to my Jewish grandparents coming from Russia in 1914.
But the first time we did put up a wall, first time we did close the gates was in fact to people of color, the Chinese exclusion law. Then we excluded the Japanese. And then of course, there were too many of my kind of folks here, and so we set up the new walls in 1925. Immigration laws. Judge, you want to say something?
Well, yeah, so the lines are really fictional. The enforcement was because of the racialization and because of writs of habeas corpus, and then that overloaded the federal courts, and then the whole system in 1965 and tried to de-racialize it, regionalize it. That created other problems, and the weighting of it. The act since then have tried to regularize it. We need a much more updated, we need to not abandon family immigration, and we need to regionalize it in our interest and that of our neighbors, like any modern society.
So I need to wrap this up. I want to thank our wonderful panel, John Herrera, Reverend Abrams, Judge Michael Bennett, retired. Thank you to all of you who listened in. You can watch it again. You can make use of the links to donate to the Center for Immigration Defense. And again, you can use the links to volunteer. Again, attorneys, paralegals, social workers, and translators. We would love your assistance. So thank you very much, and thank you to the folks from Catholic Charities for putting this on for us today.
Thank you. Thank you.